This episode of the Young and Pruitt podcast is brought to you by Carpy's Custom Screen Printing. If you need labels, t-shirts, banners, race car graphics, window stickers, and anything else in between, give our buddies over at Carpy's a call. Or you can email them at sales@carpys.com. You can also find them on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter, hit them up at Carpys_CO. For Instagram, it's at Carpys. And you can also look them up on their website, www.carpys.com. Give them a holler, tell them what you need, and they'll come up with a perfect product for you.
And once you are done shopping at Carpy's, be sure to head over to youngandpruitt.com, where you can find every single episode of this podcast. Ones like Bobby Allison, Joey Knuckles, Spencer Davis, and all the long line of Timmy Petchak episodes. You can check out Layla's blog. You can head over to our fan forum, create a membership, join the discussion, and talk about anything you want. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube. Be sure to hit us up a nice review. Go over on Twitter, Instagram, at Young and Pruitt on both.
Y'all hear me too?
I mean, I can check.
I got you.
I got you now. That was way better.
Okay.
Maybe because you were a little bit farther away.
Yeah, I wiggled some stuff around over here.
Okay.
First off, a round of applause for that new aero package. I loved it. A lot of the fans loved it. The media was kind of torn, and most of the drivers were completely against it, but a few of them did admit that it was good racing. That's mainly what we're going to talk about on here. We got Tim Petchak on here today. He's going to tell us how heavy the air really is and what they all did and what they're trying to do. But before we get going, David was out in Kansas for the NHRA drag racing.
That was a good, Saturday was good. That sport in general is just insane. It's just a big physics project.
What do you got to say? You're like the reconnaissance guy going out into a different area. We don't ever really talk about drag racing on here as much.
Yeah, fortunately, I've worked in drag racing before. I worked for Don Schumacher Racing, so big race wins were something that I got to experience right out the gate, so that was cool. I got to live in the shop, and my apartment in the shop was right across from the scrapyard, so nothing but hand fabricated headers, CNC billet heads, engine blocks, connecting rods, pistons.
Yeah, wasn't your alarm clock the blower dyno?
Yeah, every day they started the blower dyno at 7 a.m. I had a long commute. It was about 30
That's
steps.
awesome. I love it.
So what do you think about that speedway out there?
So that's a low-key event, but it's pretty cool. Last time I was there, we had to evacuate Saturday afternoon in 2011 for tornadoes, and it was the same storm system that leveled Joplin. So, yeah, it was intense. I'm a weather magnet in general.
Well, racing seems to be a weather magnet in general. What about like the experience? How can you compare it to like an experience that you would see at like a NASCAR race?
I think this format, a lot like Supercross, is more set to be successful in today's day and times with society and everything. You get a lot of fast action, boom, it's gone. You get a break, and then you get another run, and then a break, and then another run, and then a break. And then there's periods where you can just go walk around the pits, go get something to eat, hang out. And then when you're ever done, they give you an hour, and then it's back to racing again. So it's like split up. There's.
Well, I mean, and I loved NHRA.
Yes.
I go to the Charlotte ones. I've been to the Gator Nationals in Gainesville many times. And to me, that's one of the best tickets in motorsports because of how accessible everything is and how much of a free roam. But you don't have a live hot
Yeah,
pit
you don't
area.
have a hot pit area.
You're pulling things with a moped or a golf cart, and no engines are running. So there's a big difference there. But as far as how close you can get to your favorite driver, how close you can get to the cars, there's a lot for a race fan at an NHRA event, I think, and a World of Outlaws show too. If you've ever been to a World of Outlaws show. Those guys are standing in their trailers and they're constantly doing pictures and signing things, and they're right there. They're easily accessible, and I think that's why when when the World Finals come every November, it's a sold out event. Like, it's an absolute sold out event. There's no more places to park. There's no more places to sit. So then it becomes standing room only. You know, the best sprint car drivers are there. The best late model drivers are there. It's a fabulous event, and it's 3 days. And the economic impact on Concord has got to be huge for the dirt finals being here.
Oh, yeah. You want to know some crazy stats on that race? They sell tickets to like 7 different countries in all 50 states.
Oh, yeah. There's someone represented from all over the place. It is amazing. There's someone there from every single state in the country, and they recognize it. And then they recognize how many countries are there, too, because the people from the other countries that buy the tickets, they have their flag there to represent them.
Yeah, I know. Australia shows up.
Yeah, so I was going to say.
Like, they show up. Like, a good, several dozen show up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
people don't realize that, sprints and late models are freaking huge out there.
And drag racing.
And nitro stuff's really good too. Rapid starter racing.
What was the turnout like out there for that race?
For Saturday, I mean, the stands were mostly packed.
Yeah.
It was nice. So that's weather, of course. It's the Midwest in the early summer. Mm-hmm. So we got through round 1. They bumped it up an hour and 15 minutes. So I had my guests. They got to meet Matt Hagan. They got signed pistons and rods, hung out, got to eat, dinner with everybody, pictures with Leah.
I love her, by the way.
Yeah.
I love Leah Pritchett.
She's unreal. She daily drives the Demon, by the way. That's her daily driver.
How was your experience with your guest compared to being in a NASCAR race?
So they had never been behind the scenes. They were drag racing fans. They've been, every year, but just that little bit of access through the sponsor, it was a whole new world. Mm-hmm. They've been going for years and years and years, and they just completely blew their entire mind once they actually had a chance to sit down and talk with somebody, which was kind of weird. I was like, you do know, like, these people will all talk to you. Like, Tony Schumacher will stop folding his parachute and come talk to you and take pictures of kids and sign autographs. Ron Capps will do that. John Force will do that. Courtney Force will do that.
And I think that's where they're one up in the NASCAR thing.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of good lessons to pull from there. And another thing is, like, the crowd. The crowd is, 4-year-olds to like 90-year-olds.
It is the most diverse crowd you're ever going to see.
Tons of women, tons of young girls, most of them racers from some sort of discipline, like either like dirt bikes, junior dragsters, quarter midgets, go-karts. Like, they all still come out to drag races, and like all sorts of different races show up. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, the other thing, too, is you have the absolute shock value of a fuel car.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That's a draw in itself right there. Then you have the pro stock guys, which that's more like the golf game. That's a finely honed aerodynamic body. That's a finely tuned set of gears and a transmission. Yeah. Yes. I mean,
suspension,
side
the whole
by side, the entire way.
Yes, that's a whole other ball game. And I keep waiting. Which obviously they have the straightest line is the quickest, but I keep waiting to see them spread apart from each other, like at some point down the track, so that like there's no wake from the other car getting on the other one to slow it down. And I've wondered why I haven't seen that. But those cars are so slick that maybe there's not enough wake on them to even get to the other car beside them. But you know how you can
there's probably enough disturbance coming out of the headers.
Yeah, do you know how they when they draft at Daytona and Talladega and they pull down on the guy.
Side draft him.
Yeah. So it's like, I wonder if that would come into play on a pro stock car. Like if you would absolutely need to be away from a guy, or if that would just slow your lap time down. If there's any wake off of his car that could slow you down, especially if you were catching him, like maybe if he whole shotted you just a little bit, is there a place where you could get to him to slow him down and then get away from him and maybe pull the win out by, half of a tenth or a quarter of a tenth, or usually they're pretty tight. But I've just wondered. I've never seen that yet, and I've always wondered.
Yeah, and they're not like they're not rubbing doors either. They're still a good 15, 20 feet apart.
But you can't cross the center line. But I'd say because they're probably so slick that maybe they don't. Maybe there's just no way for it to ever happen. Because their drag numbers are pretty low.
Oh yeah.
We need to get Tanner Gray on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
My little boy loves him.
He's a local. He lives here.
Yeah.
Really?
And a buddy of mine, Kevin Finney, works over there, and I messaged him a while back, and he's like, man, I got a hat for you. You need to come by. You need to come by. And I never can get over there to Denver and see him.
So to jump back into what the whole topic of this show is for, and why we brought your expertise back in. So about halfway through the Open, I think it was, I texted you.
Yes, you did.
And I said, what do you think of this? And you responded, man, that air's heavy, ain't it?
Let me tell you what you just witnessed. You just witnessed a complete change of the guard. And what has happened is NASCAR told these teams they were going to make these changes. They said, look, here's your rule package. There was no testing. You couldn't get a blueprint for brake ducts and go get a couple tunnel runs in to see what you could do. They they had an official bring those ducts over like 3 days before.
Yeah, I was standing out at practice, standing there watching those guys go, and two guys come walking in. One guy had one guy had the other. I'm like, who are those guys? And then it said NASCAR across the back of their shirts. I'm like, there's no way they're just now getting those.
Yes. Well, what they did was they brought them by early in the week to make sure they would fit in your car. That way, if you had to move any bars or you had any kind of clearance issues, you could correct them before you got to the racetrack. So you had a restrictor plate. You had a huge spoiler. You had way more splitters. So they sent CAD drawings out so you could add feet and bungs to your structure so that you could bolt the splitter up, because there's a call out on the hole pattern for those things. So there was little bits that they gave you to help you get prepared, so that everybody was the same when they got there. And basically what happened is you had people, instead of flaring things out, now they were bracing them up so they wouldn't flare. So because you had so much spoiler and a restrictor plate and more splitter, I don't know that you could really free it up enough to get it like crazy loose. I think maybe the dirty air probably helped them get loose when they got loose, but you had the whole recovery thing. I think Casey Kane was 4 laps down at one time, and he came back and finished in the top 10.
Yeah,
and he's on a team that's in a building. They're in a building situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're leaving one alliance, fixing to get in with another one. You know, they're in a transitional period too. And I think for someone that's pulling for a particular driver, they can see they have a chance for recovery with this package. So what I'm interested in is when it comes back. Does it come back to second Pocono? Does it come back to second Michigan? Because what's going to happen is now that there's a race under the belt, people are already figuring out what they need to do to their cars to make them fast.
Yeah.
So they're going back and trying to get the drag off of them now. I don't care what nobody says. They're going the opposite way that their cars are built for the 600 this weekend. They're going to go the opposite way. So I've wondered about the whole slowing down thing. But then we watched the dirt race at Eldora with the trucks, and that's one of the best darn races you're going to watch for me, for door-to-door action and having a good time, because I still think that, you know, the better driver, you know, could possibly still win. But even all those guys that are out there racing in Cup, I don't know how you could take anything away from any of them, because they're all pretty talented. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever ridden in a Cup car before, but I have ridden in the passenger side of a Cup car at Charlotte about 175 miles an hour, which is pretty close to where those guys were. And there's no way I could drive one. I can't see straight. My equilibrium doesn't work. You know, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of forces on your body going on that you don't even realize. And then these guys are like, you know what? My car's it's a tick loose, or it's a tick this, or man, I really need to work on this. While they're going that fast, racing these other guys, they're daydreaming about what it's going to take to make their car better and what they're going to talk to their crew chief about on the intermission or the break or whatever that's going to be. So those are the kind of things that floor me, it's just truly how special those guys are, you know, just really, truly how much talent they got to multitask going that fast with those kind of forces on them. That's the stuff that I think is really cool about what they do. But back to the package, you have eliminated the trickery. The spoiler's so big and the splitter's so big and the restrictor plate takes so much horsepower away, and then you have the openings in the nose, so that when you do pull out on your own, you know, there could be enough of a penalty there for the next guy to catch you. The one thing that I didn't understand in the All-Star race was in the Open, those guys were, you had to push someone to give them a run to get by the leader, and the guys in the All-Star race never did that. Like they would never pair up to push a guy out to get to Kevin Harvick, whether they could loosen him up or anything. Like there's there wasn't enough, or maybe they were just waiting until the last 10 laps or whatever. But I think that's why one of the reasons he won is because there was too much greed going on behind him.
Yeah.
Where they should have been pushing each other instead of racing each other, side drafting each other. You should have picked a guy to push, because that's what I saw in the Open. I saw way more, when a guy got a good push, he could pass the leader.
Yeah.
Well, so Joey and Brad actually came out and said, I think we can get this package drafting like it was at Daytona a few years back when Trevor Bryan won that Daytona 500 where you had those 2-car guys.
Yeah.
He's like, we can do this with this package. He's like, we're just a couple sessions away with our engineers.
Yeah, because then all you're doing is taking both your cars into the tunnel and setting them nose to tail.
Yeah,
right?
but you still have to cool that thing. You still have to have. There's a spec radiator now, and I don't think that thing will hold enough water to do that for the amount of time it would take. And if NASCAR puts the no push rule in place.
Yeah. So
no hooking up bumpers.
What I got from that when we were watching the Open, and I know that there was probably
like y'all's car was fast. Like the car from y'all's team was very the 47 was quick.
And he also did a very good job. He picked up on it really quickly.
Yeah, and not to mention you got Gene Dehart over there that he's known for speedway racing and getting drag out of a car. So it was not a surprise to me to see that car running good. Not one bit.
But what I seen from it, it looked like if you went in 1960 and you dropped restrictor plates on all those cars and no one had ever even heard of the word drafting or tandem drafting, and they put this stuff on there and they just waved the green flag and everyone just raced and hadn't figured out quite how to do it yet. So,
well, Richard Petty will straight up tell you that he learned about driving or about drafting way back when, following an 18-wheeler down the interstate. He started feeling and that's kind of how he started approaching it, because he felt something while he was driving down the road and then applied it to his racing career.
Yeah, because you've seen if the 11 would have stayed stuck to the 19, just that little bit of them breaking off, and who was it? The 22 was pushing the 4. That was the difference.
Yeah,
those two stayed stuck together, and the 11 and the 19 got a foot in between them, and that was the extra foot that Suarez needed to pass him.
Yeah, I mean and those guys are going to watch videos. They're going to watch films. They're all going to look and see what they could have did better. How can I make my car better now? Now there's engineers working on making that body package better so that you don't hurt yourself. Mm-hmm. Okay, because they know they're going to race it again, mm-hmm. And that's like with me. I'm like pretty much. You need to start building cars just for that package.
The drivers have said that it's easier, but the problem is the best driver still won.
Yeah.
It was more competitive. There was more cars around him trying different things.
He might have learned something quicker than those other guys. Yes. He never said nothing on the radio to protect himself, because once he says it on the radio, then everybody else has got it, because it's on NASCAR Now and Radioactive and all that kind of stuff. Everybody is all over everything, like ants on a sucker, dude. Everybody is on every single thing all the time. Like people are digging, man. Yeah. They're digging hard for every little bits and pieces they can get.
Yeah. So what I got from that was the driver said that they didn't like it. They didn't like that style of racing. They said that you need to put it back in the hands of the drivers, and you need to do this and you need to do that. Well, every driver wants to have the fastest car, the best handling car, and to be able to go out there and lap the field. They don't give a damn about how cool the race looks, how fun it is.
Right.
Nothing. They want to go out there and lap second place 20 times.
Oh, yeah, because it's all about winning. It's about being the best.
Yeah, they don't give a shit how good of a show it is.
It's all about who can drive at the most slip angle.
Yeah.
Who can drive at the most slip angle. That's the ragged edge, as Cole Trickle calls it, but there's slip angle is it's like how sideways can you drive and still maintain your speed. And there's a few of those guys that can do it a little bit better than the others.
And when you start bunching those guys up, regardless how you do it, if you do it by drag, if you do it by tires, if you do it by restrictor plate, whatever, if you bunch those guys together, they don't like it. They want to be able to get away from each other and drive away. But the problem with that is from the fans' point of view, you have the 4 most rated races. You have Talladega, Daytona, Martinsville, Bristol. And then here recently, the road course races, because they have gotten pretty competitive. What are the 4 things that those races all have in common? The cars are all right on top of each other.
Yeah, they are. Going to see a cup race at Martinsville, it's a good ticket.
They don't care. Like, when me and my wife were sitting here on the couch watching the race, she doesn't know the difference between 200 miles an hour and 170. It's after 100, it's fast. You're going scary fast.
A race at Martinsville is probably more gut-wrenching than a race at Kansas, just because everybody's fender to fender.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a game of inches.
Yeah.
Racing back to the line.
All the cars are on top of each other, and they can actually get up and do stuff with each other. When Martin Truex leads all but 2 laps at the 600, yeah, that smells like an ass kicking. But no one, like, that's not...
Unless you're a Martin Truex Jr. fan.
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
Then you're on the top of your seat.
But the
telling
problem
the next
is
guy
that's
that's got
only-
Harvick stuff on or Kyle Busch stuff on,
Yeah.
you're giving him the finger.
Thanks
and
for coming.
Yeah, holding your beer up, smiling at him. Yeah,
that's only a 40th, or less than a 40th now. That's only a 40th. If everyone had equal fans, that's only a 40th of who leaves happy.
Right, but the other thing, too, is it's all the water cooler buzz. And, in the 80s and early 90s, it was... you had diehard Ford people that hated Chevrolets and diehard
Yes.
Chevrolet people that hated Fords.
Now we
and
don't. Yeah.
and that was the thing. You were brand loyal and you pulled for that brand on race day. I mean, if you, in the mid 80s, if you were a Bill Elliott fan, I guarantee you every car in your driveway was a Ford.
Yeah.
There was nothing else in there.
That's exactly
And if you
how
were
my
an Earnhardt
grandparents
fan,
were.
and if you were an Earnhardt fan, there was a Chevrolet in your driveway. There's no doubt about it. And I think, times are different now because it's, things are more about convenience and how quick you can get them, and you just want to get there. You're not worried about what you're driving or what you're riding in. There's just not the, I think there's status symbols, whether it's a 4-door Mercedes or a 4-door BMW or a Range Rover. There's things along those lines, but most of those people don't like racing anyway.
Mm-mm.
So. And I do see some good things, like them having Cole Swindle there. I think that's a good move. I think you got to get these hot artists to the track. You got to get people coming to the track and camping out and hanging out. You got to give them something other than the race to have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how they'll learn about racing, because there was a little something other that supplemented that drew them to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then really and truly, I'd say you'd probably be more driver loyal now than you would be brand loyal, because that's just doesn't seem to be what society is nowadays. They would be loyal to a likeness or a face than whether you drive a Toyota Camry not or a Fusion.
And you
or a
have
Chevrolet.
to in order to get the casual fan to watch, you have to get the casual fan's attention. I'll say it right now. That Monday after the 600, it's going to be so bad.
Like I said, man.
Twitter.
Lap 8. Pole sitter's out 14 seconds. That's if it's not Harvick.
Yeah. So you're seeing this. It's like, okay, now here's a cool ass race that all these fans like. The media were torn on it for whatever reason. And then the drivers, they're drivers. But the fans loved it. A massive percentage of the fans loved it. I love it, and that's my job. I was glued to the TV the entire time because you had to watch.
Yeah.
You didn't have to watch the first 15, last 15
Well, I was
in the
excited to
restarts.
watch the first practice. I really was, because it was untested.
But it's not just the new. Everyone's like, oh, you were only watching because it was new. No, I wasn't. I was watching because I could watch second place suck up behind them and then, mess up or whatever and come back. And then here comes these other cars. Like, first place never could get away. They could get away for a little bit, but they couldn't stay away. And that's the biggest thing about...
Well, I think now, after, like we talked about before, as they review footage and they watch films and they brainstorm together as groups, they're going to point out all the mistakes they made. And the next package that race will be way more competitive. I'll just about be willing to bet any.
And it was already super competitive.
Yeah, but I think you give them guys a chance to learn and tweak and mold and do and try and just wait till you can get CAD prints of spoilers and ducts and all that stuff, and you start taking those things to the wind tunnel. You're gonna be booking wind tunnel time to make those cars better.
Yeah, so we had 38 green flag lead changes in the All-Star. in 98 laps, or however many laps they ran, 93, whatever. We had 38 lead changes. We didn't have one. We were a foot away from having one in the last 10 laps, but we didn't have one. The best handling car, the best driver, the best team so far this year ended up leading the last 10 laps.
Which is how it should be.
Duh.
Yeah.
So
Good for them.
that 38 lead changes, green flag lead changes, was more than the past 4 years combined. Last year,
0.
there were 0. How is that a bad thing? It's so frustrating. How is
very
that a bad
frustrating.
thing?
I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just the sport is in a transitional phase. Technology is such an amazing thing, and there's so many tools to work with, and there's just when you don't think you could ever do any more, you can do more. It is crazy what you're able to do with the tools and the resources that you have. It's amazing, and the CFD that you get to see, and the computational fluid dynamics and the wakes underneath the cars. I'm not underneath the cars, and now you can start positioning parts that are already on your car anyway to create an advantage for you, whether that's getting air out from under it or holding it in there or forcing the jet underneath the car to stay efficient longer. There's just technology is just it's amazing, man.
People don't realize that our aero stuff now is rivaling like F1's amount of aero.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff that we do underneath our cars, and I mean, you know it better than anybody else, the R&D that goes into it, the shaping, the testing. Yeah, we don't have, giant carbon, fins and completely flat underbodies and everything, but the amount of, like you're saying, trickery and R&D and wind tunnel time, like, these cars are so super complex and by default super sensitive.
And let me just break off of that subject real quick. I spent some time with Ray Abraham last week, and he's got that 36 Chevy, I think it is, or it's a Dodge. I can't remember which one it is, but he's got Valvoline on there, and it is a road course racer. Him and Bill Elliott drove it at Road Atlanta. They run over 170 miles an hour in that thing, and they took it to the A2 wind tunnel over here at Aerodyne, and they spent some time with Gary Aker in there. And they built all these fins for the front, in front of the tires, so no air hit the tire. I mean, they're going to
a fun car?
This is a fun car. That's what I told him. I said, dude, how cool is that? No, and this is 100% designed by Ray, okay? This thing is super bad. So you get to design a car. It's exactly how you want it. All the suspension components are built because that's how you want to adjust them. Then you go drive it. And he told me, he said, after they ran it the first time, he said, you wouldn't believe the people that came to the fence to watch it run the second time. Just because it goes out there and it's like shock value, because this thing's like pearl painted and beautiful. And I mean, it's like no stone has been left unturned on this thing. Like this thing is an incredible hot rod. Yikes. And it's been wind tunnel tested 2 or not 3 times already. I think maybe this last time I went was the 3rd time that they had tunnel time with it. And, now they're going to Indy to race it, and they're going to Pikes Peak. Him and Bill Elliott, just having a good old time. And I think Jeff Gordon's slated to drive this thing, too, at some point. Just because it's fun and they want to.
Yeah.
How come we can't get in the wind tunnel till Thursday? Well, Ray's got his toys in the wind tunnel all week.
And so that's what I was telling him. I was like, he's like, we took this thing to the wind tunnel. I'm like, yeah, I saw footage of it. He said, what? I said, yeah, it's all over social media. I said, I saw you smoking it and everything, dude. I said, yeah, I saw how your front wings worked and how the air didn't touch the front tires. I said, good job, man,
So, okay, now with all that being said, is this package that they ran at the All-Star race, is that the great equalizer?
I'd say it's a really close step to it. But the problem with equalizing things with packages is you still have technology to help you make your car better than the next guy. So you can equalize it like right out of the box if you can bring parts to the track that nobody gets to try, nobody gets to test. But like I said, the wheels are already turning on these bigger teams, and there's already engine support or engineering support to that package. I guarantee you Doug Yates and his guys are working on making more horsepower already with that spacer. It never stops.
Yeah, there's a reason why there's a reason why the restrictor plate keeps getting smaller. It's because they keep figuring out how to get more power with less air.
Yes.
So how are they going to make these cars faster without getting into like the sensitive like information that you would know?
Well, and I'll just speak from just my
like
brand, Petchak
30,000.
Performance.
Yeah.
So there's no affiliation whatsoever of what I would do is I would take all the drag off of it I could. I would brace that thing up so nothing fluttered, which is the opposite of what you're doing on most downforce tracks now. It would be the structural integrity of the car body and all the windows would come back, and
So
that
you
way
basically turn it into a speedway car.
Yeah, I would take my best Speedway car and put that package on there, and that's what I would show up with at Charlotte. I would ask the Speedway guy, I'd be like, "Hey, I need your best game right now. I need your best game, bro. I need your pole sitting, your Talladega pole sitting, car build sheet, and that's what I'm taking to the next 1.5 mile track with this package on it. That's what I would do."
Wow.
Is there ever a time to where it ever gets back to looking like it will this weekend?
I think it's just going to get better. But the teams with more resources and more money are going to be able to develop it. And in a sport where 0.2 of a second makes all the difference in the world, 0.2, snap of a finger on each end of the racetrack, it adds up over 15, 20 laps. And you have teams that are just trying to survive and make it to the next race and hope they don't tear a car up. And then you got teams that run them one time and throw them away. So it's the deal where like David comes in where you got to find the next young guy. You got to find the next young dirt driver that's hot. And then you got to find a company that just falls in love with him, that wants to pump the money into him and build his brand. And then you get yourself an alliance with one of the higher up teams with the resources and the technology. And that's the way you kind of got to go. There's just no stopping it. There's no stopping it because your job every day is to constantly overcome and find more. And that's what everybody does.
So would there ever be a time with that package where someone can lead all but 2 laps and win the race?
I think maybe if one company designed and built all the cars to a particular spec, and then if you Hawkeye them like they're doing now, and you could compare all the scans, and you could say, yeah, I know these cars are all within 70 thousandths of each other, but then it comes down to all those drivers feel different things. And now, are you bringing your own crew chief with you? And does he understand tire pressures a little bit better than somebody else? Right? Mm-hmm. Because every time you increase air pressure, you're increasing spring rate. When you lower air pressure, you're lowering spring rate. You look at a tire sheet, you look at all the temperatures, and there's just some of those guys that can put 2 and 2 together a little bit better than some of the other guys. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where Rodney Childers is really good because, I raced go-karts with that guy back in the early 90s. And then he raced late models. And, he's a late model racer with a high school education. He's laying it down on everybody every other weekend. And he's a common sense racer. And those guys that Tony's put around him are common sense racers. And they're good at playing the game. They're good at taking advantage of the areas that are sensitive. And they execute well. And it shows.
So if it wasn't doing this aero package, what could they have done to have the same result without doing all the aero stuff to it?
I think that you'd have to clone 40 guys that all had the same ability if you wanted them to be on top of each other. Because like we were talking about earlier, the name of the game is to lap second place 20 times. The name of the game is to show up, win every practice, lead every lap, win the race, leave, and come back and do it again the next weekend. That's the mentality that you carry week in and week out. There is no, I want to put on a good show. It's like, I want to win. I want the points. I want to make sure I'm going to be in Homestead at the end of the year. And that's where it's at. And it's I don't want to call it a chess match or a golf game, but really it is, because if you're working on your car 400 of the 500 laps so that it's really, really good the last 100. So is the sun going down? Is the temperature dropping 25, 30 degrees? That there's all these factors. Is your driver switched on enough to help you with all these adjustments? I guarantee you that if you just put 2 pounds of air in one of the tires, just randomly put 2 pounds of air in one of the tires, you could make a car undrivable for one of those guys.
Yeah.
That's just how sensitive it is. That's how much of a razor blade they're on. That's what's so crazy about it. Well, you can't expect a guy, if he walls his car it doesn't matter what kind of adjustment they make on the next pit stop because he's not making it to the next pit stop. So he's trying to figure out a new line. He's trying to figure out a better way. His crew chief's crunching numbers. Engineers are crunching numbers. Here's what maybe I can do. Here's what maybe we can't do. Here's what happened here last year. Here's what we ran into last year. They're going through all these scenarios. They're going through all these notes. They're going through all this information for that next pit stop. Okay, did we make it better? Oh no, well we better, not only have we better go back, but we better go back one more click where we were. There's just tons and tons of things that are going on top of those pit boxes. And who's to say that, you don't have 20 people at your race team that are your aero engineers or your vehicle dynamics engineers, your setup engineers that aren't pulling up 7-post data and ride rate data and force data to help you make those decisions too. So you possibly could have 30 to 40 people helping you make the decision you're going to make in 65 more laps. That's the stuff that people don't even know that goes on. It's not just one guy in his own world. There could be many. There could be as much as 50 people helping you make that decision. And that's what happens. You just, good people and people that think a little bit deeper, the name of the game is to go there and win. And it's like, I think that's why the sport is where it is, because the people that have ended up on the teams with the best resources and the best stuff and the best tools and the unlimited budgets, if they don't get complacent and they keep pushing like TRD has and like Ford has, you're going to have a hard time catching them. I mean, the 4-car is not going to get worse. It is not going to get worse because now they've got everybody beating their brains out. You got one Ford dominating, and these other guys are beating their brains out trying to figure out what it is. Well, what if it's Kevin Harvick? What if it's Kevin Harvick and how he processes information during a race? You can't get that. You have to have Kevin Harvick to get that.
Yeah.
So that drives his value up. That drives his brand up.
First time that a Chevy hasn't been in the top 10 in years.
Yeah.
But where is this grand memory that everybody has of racing on the edge, cars side by side, action-packed the whole time?
Well, I think the radial tires were a big part of that. I think if you look back in the 80s when they were on bias-ply tires, there'd be white smoke coming off the right rear. I mean, they'd be hazing the right rear the whole race.
But the races didn't look anything like what it did this past weekend.
Well, you look at the difference in aero stuff too. There was no side windows. The cars were 6-8 inches off the ground. Nothing about them was cleaned up. That's all stock sheet metal. You could jump over the wall and hit on a spoiler with a hammer, to tighten the car up if it was too loose. And that's how they did it back then. They just did it. If the thing was a little loose, Junior Johnson would go over the wall with a sledgehammer and he'd smack the right side of the spoiler up a little bit and he'd fix that problem. Or he'd put some tape on the grill. It's just an evolution of now you put packer in or pull packer, or you put a spring rubber in or you pull a spring rubber. It's it's just evolution, man. It's like looking at a car from the 70s that was on a production lot to looking at a car that's on a production lot now of one 4-door sedan versus another. They're way more round. They're smaller. They're lighter. The engines are smaller because the engines can be smaller because they don't weigh as much. So they're more fuel efficient. It is a process of, for lack of a better term, trimming the fat, leaning things out, making them better, making them more efficient. And the same thing with race cars. How can I hold this particular part on with half the fasteners? I mean, have you ever picked up a 5-gallon bucket full of nuts and bolts and washers? It's pretty damn heavy. So wouldn't you want them milled out, made out of titanium and the shortest you can make them and all that kind of stuff? So your bucket of bolts that you built your car with was, 30 pounds lighter than your competition's? Sure you would.
Yeah.
That was one of the trends of the late 90s, early 2000s was documenting every single fastener in your car, special ordering them, and you had a bolt kit show up at your shop for a race car. Titanium, milled, drill for safety wire, jet nuts, the lightest, strongest stuff you could buy. I mean, they were expensive, but that was the price people were willing to pay to have a shot at winning, to have more tungsten in your frame rails.
But the race itself, how they were racing, didn't look anything like what it did this past weekend.
No, they were, and I think that's good for sponsors for more cars to be on the TV at the same time. I think it is. I think it was a more exciting race for the fans. I think drivers that maybe feel like they could only win at Daytona and Talladega, might feel like now they can win at a track that has this package, and I think they'll push for it. The and I read on JSki this past week too, where NASCAR has considered having middle of the week races, and the track owners don't want it because their revenue is going to be low and this, that, and the other. So there's always going to be some kind of conflict. But yes, I did enjoy watching that race. I thought it was a good race, and I think that it would allow, if that package was across the board from Daytona to Homestead, I'd say you probably would have 20 plus winners in a season.
Wow.
I'd say you have 20 winners. And if you had 20 winners, that's 20 people that sponsors want to get involved with. That's 20 more brands. That's 20 more ways to get to people. That's what I think that you would see if it was hands down across the board. It didn't matter if it was Martinsville, Richmond, whatever.
Is it just now that the people that are in racing and the people that are fans of the sport now, is it because they grew up watching a highlight reel? So they have this skewed version of what used to be?
Well, I think you do what your parents do, right?
Yeah.
So like my uncle had a speed shop. That's the guy who raised me since I was 12 years old. And every Sunday you watched a cup race. And when the cup race was over, we went to the shop and we went to work.
Yeah.
That's how we did it. We watched the cup races every Sunday. That was you ate dinner at noontime and you watched the race. Then when the race was over, you went down and worked for 5 or 6 hours. So it would literally either be playing on the radio in the shop, or if you were somewhere where there wasn't a radio, you had the key turned backwards in your vehicle and it was playing on the radio in your truck. That's just how it was. I mean, and I don't know that,
because
I don't know what people do anymore. Yeah, I just don't know.
You always hear this calling back that it needs to be like it used to be. We need to put it back in the driver's hands. We need to do this. We need to do that. We need to have it like it was. Well, like it was, cars used to break all the time. Motors used to blow up all the time. Cars used to go laps down. That the leader would lap everyone but the first 2-3 cars, and sometimes he would even lap second place. You didn't have the lucky dog. You didn't have the stages.
Well, think about this too. There was a lot less things to do for entertainment back in those days than there is now. I think that's one of the factors too, is there's a lot more to do than a football game or a baseball game or a horse race or a car race. And I think when you just say the Southern 500, for instance, that was one of the biggest things in Darlington. It was an annual pilgrimage. It was an annual weekend. It was on your calendars. It's what you did. And you went to the parade, and then when you were grown and had kids, you took your kids to the parade. I just think it's all how you grow up and what you grow up around.
So does that mean that the racing back then was that much better?
I don't want to say the racing was that much better. There was just, people lived different back then. They just did. People got in the station wagon and they packed peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and they went to the race. That's what they did. It's just, I don't know. I just think with technology and media, and you can literally just go sit in a chair in the shade and you just arc your phone up and, oh, so-and-so won. And here's how many points he won by.
Jesus.
Because people just want the end result now. They don't want to know what it took to get there. They just want the end result.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to get at, I don't see how, I'm trying to figure out how someone who...
You're right in saying that it was a great race. It was a great race. But my point from where I come from is that package is getting worked on now to be better, whether NASCAR likes it or not. So you're either going to see a better race the next time they roll it out, or you're going to see Kevin Harvick or a Denny Hamlin
do it even worse.
Yes, because somebody's going to pick it up a little bit quicker. Somebody's going to have the resources to build a car just for that race. That's what you're up against. The teams are not equal, because there's teams that have tons and tons of resources, and there's teams that are just feeding off a hearsay.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
And bad for the sport, according to some.
Well, we haven't quite redefined what good attendance is. We haven't redefined what good ratings are, because like Timmy was saying, there's so many options there's
Well, the
a finite
All-Star
amount
race
of
was in the
people.
ones. It was in the ones.
It was flat over last year, so it was 1.5 last year. It's 1.5 this year, and I think the logical way to say is, okay, we're flat, so we didn't lose anything, but why the fuck was anybody going to tune in? Because last year you had 0 lead changes, and the only people watching were the hardcore fans.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. There aren't going to be many people that are going to nerd out over a rules package. There's only going to be I just don't think the 20-somethings of today understand that or care to understand that. It's just not in their DNA. It's not in their fabric. It's like we've talked about before. You know, I was one of those kids that if I saw somebody with a hot rod car, like I wanted to go up to their garage and hang out with them and check it out. I wanted to hear it crank up and I wanted to ride in it. I don't know that kids are like that anymore nowadays.
No, I mean, they either, were you entertained, yes or no? Yes. Were you entertained to watch again, yes or no? And that's kind of where we're at with that whole thing.
So it's
an entertainment business. That's
and if you
gotta be.
I think they got to figure out, you know, what can you offer someone to come to the track. I mean, I look at Charlotte. Why aren't tickets $20? Why aren't kids tickets $7 or $8?
Free.
And and I don't know.
Kids tickets should be free.
Yeah, I don't know what Bruton's deal is. You know what he's got to make or what it takes to run a racetrack like that. And I'm not telling him what to do. But my thing is if an empty seat or you sold that seat for $20 and it was full, you know, did you make any money or not? Or is there a flat rate where you only have to make so much to get to the next race?
Well,
you have to make so much to get to the next race.
Under that current TV package, so what the revenue split is 60% goes to the track, like 30% goes to the teams, then 10% goes to NASCAR. So like the tracks are getting the biggest portion of it.
Well, here's what you do. If you really want to make some waves and you really just want to wick it up, you go build a short track and you invite them guys to come on a Wednesday night. And you don't worry about TV money. You don't worry about any of that stuff. You stream it and see what happens. Okay? You don't worry about going to Charlotte or Texas or somewhere like that. You don't worry about going to any track that is currently gone to right now. You go get you a bull ring and you get it going and see what happens. And market it in a way where you just put it on laptops, put it through people's phones, live stream it, whether it's YouTube or whatever it is, where people can watch it in their hand. And then you've hardly got no money in it. Promote it for a while, see what happens. And maybe it's a one-time thing, maybe it's a 2-time-a-year thing. You know, North Wilkesboro is sitting up there growing weeds up through it, but it would take millions of dollars to update that place because you're going to have soft walls. You're going to have soft walls. I don't think these guys nowadays would race somewhere that don't have soft walls.
No.
You know, but
Maybe at 170 mile an hour.
You know, and I think too, and this is kind of bad to say, but you know, when the legendary figures, you know, are not with us anymore, that people pulled for religiously and hung on to, you know, maybe they're just finally done. You know, the sun's gone. It's and that was a lot of the fan base right there. You know, all the 3 fans going to the 8, all the new fans the 8 brought.
The other half going to the 29.
Yeah. I think there was, you know, I think those people, they put their work in and they came to all the races they could with whatever they had to come in, whether it was a raggedy van or a brand new Explorer or whatever it was. You know, it was personal for them to be there. It was personal for them to be there and see the 3 or the 43 or the 2 or the 33, you know, Harry Gant, Rusty Wallace, Dale Earnhardt, Bill Elliott in the 9. You know, it was personal for them to make those trips and go there. And they only worried about 2 or 3 cars. I'm here to see Bill Elliott beat Rusty Wallace. I'm here to see Dale Earnhardt beat Harry Gant. You know, I'm here to see Dale Earnhardt stalk Bill Elliott, put a nose to him, loosen him up just enough to get by him and win the race with 1 lap to go. You know, clutch performance type thing. You know, you may see those times again, you may not. But I just think the times are so different that if, you know, maybe there just aren't that many motorsports fans anymore. And you're asking too much out of them. You're asking too much out of the ones that are still left. Maybe that's the question. Because you're either a car lover or you're not.
Yeah,
You're either a performance car lover or you're not.
Yeah.
And you look at the import cars, like the import tuner cars, the 300Zs and, the Subarus and like the whole Fast and Furious type of cars. That stuff got really, really big for a while.
Yeah.
Import Tuner was one of the magazines. It got really big. And I just think that things change and technology changes and styles change. It's like music's not the same. There's a new genre every 10 or so years. And I just think that comes with the territory.
Yeah. I just think that package that they had was...
Oh, it was great.
That was the
I
most
agree 100%.
exciting,
It was an
exciting thing. And I'm just trying to, wrap my head around how someone would think that there's been better racing than that.
I think if you polled everybody who watched it, everybody in the garage, and everybody who drove in the race cars, and the only thing you asked them was, is this a step in the right direction? 92% would say yes.
Yeah.
Well, especially if that 92% are the ones that haven't had a real shot at winning.
Bingo.
And they know that here's a way I can lock my sponsor in for 3 more years. Here's a way I can get the better bonus money through winnings. Now I got a chance. Mm-hmm. So I can see in that respect. But as far as the fans go, and I just haven't walked up to fans and pulled them and asked them what they want. I don't know if NASCAR has people that do that. I don't know how they get the answers or if they even ask the questions. I don't know. Because I'm on the performance side, so I don't...
Consensus that you always see, they like the short tracks, they like the plate tracks, they like the road courses, they like truck races, and they like pit stops.
I can promise you that back in 2001, 2-ish, 3-ish, when I was working for Ray Abraham, and I would leave work, and if I had my work shirt on and I stopped at Outback Steakhouse and I had dinner, or I stopped at Vinny's or wherever I stopped at to eat dinner on my way home, there was always somebody, if I happened to have my work shirt on, there was always somebody that would come up and say, "Man, I'm glad Dodge is back. I love Dodges, man. I'm a Mopar guy from forever." There's people that just would come up and they would strike up a conversation with you and you could talk to them and you could get a real vibe of, where they came from and stuff like that. And, that stuff don't happen anymore. Don't happen.
So when you used to go to the racetrack in 99 or 2000, what percentage of the fan base cheered for the 3-car?
A lot of it. There was a lot of 3 flags in the infield. And if you were on that team, or if you were on the Bud team, or you were on the 9 team that Casey drove, as he came along, or the 9 of Bill Elliott, there was, when you were leaving the racetrack, if you were hungry, you could get something to eat.
Yeah.
People would give you beers. They'd ask if you wanted something to eat. You were part of their extended family. Like, they loved you. Even if you weren't Bill Elliott, you were one of the guys that worked on his cars. Like there was a love for you for the fans. And even like Tony Uri Jr. will tell you, he used to kid me before he'd go to Talladega, and they go out there and walk on the boulevard. All them Bud guys would go out there on the boulevard, and those people loved them. And they looked forward to seeing them every single Talladega trip. Those guys would go out there and go down the boulevard and see all their people, they called them.
So would you say like 75% of the fan base was all for the 3?
I wouldn't say 75%. I would say it was probably, I'd say you could say 25 Rusty, 25 Bill Elliott, 25 Dale Earnhardt, probably 10% Harry Gant. And these are just theoretical numbers, just me thinking back, because Bill was your most popular driver. Big E was winning the championships. Rusty was hardcore winning. Mark Martin was winning.
Then you had the Labanis in there.
Yeah, but you only had 8 or 9 guys that were capable of winning even back then, because the resources were spread so far out, because people were just buying. You'd buy a chassis from Banjo Matthews or from Hutcherson Pagan or from Laughlin or from Ronnie Hopkins, and it came with upper control arms, lower control arms, a rear end housing, truck arms. It came with all that stuff. You weren't building any of that stuff. Then your setup guy would put the setup in it, so he'd set the wheelbase, set the caster and cambers, center the rear end up in the car. Then you send it to a job shop where they're going to hang a body on it for you for $8,000, right? So then you get this car back. Now your finish fab guys do the aluminum work, do the windows, put the ductwork in it, put the grille screens in it. They paint the chassis white, and they assemble it. That's how it was back then. You only had 12 guys or so on your team, and them guys traveled, and they rode in a van every week. You didn't have the stuff that goes on now. You didn't have the research and development teams. I mean, you got research and development teams now that are 3 times the size of those good teams were back then. And that's what Bill Elliott used to tell us. He said, we worked way more than you guys did when we only ran 18 races, and you guys are running, I think we were doing 33 races when he was driving the Everham car, 33 or 34 races. But they were working 70, 80 hours a week and driving to the racetrack and all that stuff back then, building their own engines, building transmissions, gears. But the difference back then was you had the Wood brothers up in Stewart, Virginia. You had Bill and those guys over in Dawsonville. You had, people were in South Carolina, people were in North Carolina. And a lot of those guys were far enough apart that guys didn't change jobs like they do now. Mm-hmm. So your same handful of guys were with you because they're territorial, because that's where they already live. They're not moving. They're not going anywhere else. So that's one of the things that has leveled the playing field a lot too, and that's why the contracts are 3 years long, because there's 1 year no competes on them, because they don't want someone. Just say you had the lead engineer from the 78 last year, they won the championship, and a team owner offers him 4 times what he's making to come and help me fix my program because I got to get the sponsor locked down because this is the last year on him. That's the desperation in the sport. That's the stuff that goes on that people don't know about.
Yeah.
So it's constantly about get more money so that you can get more resources so that you can build a better product. Mm-hmm. So it's such a multifaceted situation. But back to what we're originally talking about, the race was good. I thought it was exciting. I didn't know who was going to win until the last 10 laps. And it was going to come down to who got the right push, who got the right restart. So you still didn't really know. Mm-mm. You really didn't. It wasn't like, okay, this car has dominated every segment. You still didn't know. And I saw that in the open early on. I was like, wow, these guys are pushing and you can catch the lead car and all that kind of stuff. But just know that package will evolve. Even if I'm sure the brake ducts will stay the same because there's a lot of money in that stuff. The spoilers are probably the easiest thing because they're CNC'd to change if they change any of that, and the spacers on the engines those are CNC'd parts, so a machine makes them, so they're going to be within a 10,000th of an inch tolerance. But the teams will find ways because they'll put the money and resources in it to find a way, because that's the object of the game.
That was my next question is, do you see this package saving any money whatsoever?
No, because you're going to have to develop this package so you can be a winner.
Right.
It's just every time the rules change, you have to spend money to get on top of it.
That's what you've said every time you've been on. Every time the rules change, you got to spend money.
Yeah, you've got to get to the wind tunnel. You have to. It's imperative. If you're showing up to win every week, that's the nature of the beast. And then when you find something, you got to get it in your car for that week. So whether that means taking it all the way apart and putting it back on a plate and having a night shift for 2 nights, that's what people do. That's what people are willing to do to win.
Wow.
All right, so let's talk about like the nuts and bolts of this actual package. So it was the ductwork.
It was the addition of nose ducts. So you had just open holes that air could go through, and then the air went out the front wheel openings.
Okay.
So it's pretty much a drag penalty is what it is.
All right, yeah. Okay, so before you get into that, it was a restrictor plate, and it was the big-ass spoiler.
Yes.
That was it?
Yep.
And why did they want to put those ducts on there? What do they do, and
the ducts
how does it affect everything?
Well, it's like when you put tape on the front end on a pit stop. You make more downforce, you take drag off, you go faster. When you open up those big holes like that, you pull out the pass, you're not going to be as efficient in clean air.
So the air is going to go in those holes in the nose and then be redirected out the front wheel wells, right?
Right. But because there's holes in the nose that you can't close up, that is a drag penalty. That's adding drag to your car that your engine has to overcome.
So how does that help the other guy? second place. How's that help second place?
Because theoretically, you're supposed to slow down, and then two guys that line up behind you are supposed to push one or the other by you.
Mm-hmm. So what does that do to the second place that's trying to pass you? Does that
well, the third place guy needs to push the second place guy by the leader. That's what I didn't understand. They didn't do in the All-Star race. I thought I would see more of that because I saw so much of it in the Open, and I'm like, well, surely these guys are watching the Open, because again, that's where you're at. Those guys are all watching the Open to see how those guys are driving and where they're running and what happens when you do this and what happens when you do that. Okay, so I get a push and I run the high side this lap. If I get a push, can I run the bottom side the next lap? Shorter distance, maybe get clear of a guy. And I'm not a race car driver, but those are just things that I wondered about, as I watched the Open unfold. And I was really surprised that there wasn't more of the third place guy pushing the second place guy, getting him a run. And then maybe even it trickling back farther than that, where the fifth place guy will push the fourth place guy because he knows that when the third place guy pushes the second guy up to the leader, they're going to make moves. And their momentum's fixing to fizzle out. Now the third place guy should really be able to pass, but then he gets locked up behind somebody. Well, maybe the fourth place guy got a good push, and he was going to make a good run. So
yeah, which is kind of what you've seen. You'd see the leader get away.
But I saw that more in the Open than I did in the All-Star race.
You'd see the leader get away. You'd see second and third working together, and then from fourth back, they were all in a line up around the top.
But I think the next time this package comes out, you'll see the guys farther back line up quicker because they'll know that that's what they're going to have to do. You're going to have to get a shove. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to get a shove, especially when it's free. When you're behind other cars and they're breaking the air up, getting that shove and there's less drag on your car. That's your chance to carry that momentum and hopefully get by.
Yeah,
I think anyway.
Now, will there be multiple lines?
I think depending on which track it is and depending on how much banking there is, I'd say, yeah, you could probably have multiple lines. But I think that because it becomes a momentum type thing, because of the restrictor plate, if you get a good enough push, I guess if you get a good enough push and the guys in front of you, touch each other enough or get on each other enough and it slows them down, they can only block one lane at a time. Mm-hmm. You could possibly get by, but I think if it's evened out real good, I think the load line would just slow you down. The more wheel you put into it, the more you turn to the left, the more, parasitic drag you're going to have on the front tires. So again, there's a setup change of, how do I take caster and all kind of stuff out of these things to free them up or to just less roll them resistance so that once I get a push, it lasts longer. Because that's what happened with the radiator stuff in 2009 and 2010 at Talladega and Daytona. It was like, well, what do I got to do to push more? Well, I need 5 more gallons of water. Okay, well, I'm going to call up CNR, and this is the dimensions of a radiator I need. And now we're going to cut this front clip up so this thing will fit in here. Mm-hmm. We're going to modify our chassis so that this radiator will fit in there because now I can push 20 seconds longer than I could the race before because I've got 2 more gallons of water.
Yeah.
That's what happens. It's just the simple A to B things that do that. And that's my point is yes, I think this package is cool, but at the same time, people are going to be working on it. And they might not be working on the plate, and they might not be working on the spoiler, and they might not be working on the nose ducts, but they're going to be working on all the things that those 3 to 4 changes affected. They're going to be working on some things.
So what was the purpose of the plate?
Just to slow them down even more, just a less throttle response. I mean, that's the thing. They had to slow them down, and the way they put it back in the driver's hands is you're going to do like the slingshot drafting type thing and the timing. So it's still in the driver's hands. Even if they only ran 150 miles an hour, it's still in the driver's hands. There's still a chance to win, whether you're running 150 or you're running 250. There's still a chance to win no matter what speed you're going, because you're definitely going faster than you run on the interstate. Because if you put those drivers in yard carts, they're going to race the hell out of them. Wheelbarrows, yard carts, doesn't matter. That's what those guys do. Yeah, that's what those guys do. So, and that's just where the sport is. Everybody's tuned in. Just some teams can afford more resources to tune you in even closer to where you need to be quicker. That's the trick, is getting it figured out quicker than the next guy. That's where it's at. And that's what lots of money and lots of technology allows you to do.
And then lastly, the spoiler was just to create more drag also.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But it was even. It was an even, the balance was even. It wasn't, It wasn't a deal where you just put a ton of rear on and you didn't add any front. It was like it was an even situation.
Because it has to be.
Yeah.
So
That's why the splitter was bigger.
So I know that you haven't seen it in in the wind tunnel yet, but what would you think the drag increase would be?
I don't know. I couldn't even speculate on that because there's just too much stuff. But obviously NASCAR has data on that because they have their own cars, so they can come up with a package like this. Their techs can take a car to the tunnel. And I actually, one of the days I was at Aerodyne, I wasn't supposed to see it, but the blinds were open a little bit, and I actually got to see.
That's not your fault.
Well, but it's just paying attention to your surroundings, And I actually got to see one of those cars come out, and I knew that something was up because things were bigger and different looking than anything that we were currently running. So I'm not real sure, where those packages come from or why they talk about them, because I've never been to a owner / NASCAR / driver, forum, closed forum type thing where they lay the things out on the table that they don't like or what they want to see different. But I don't know how unless people just don't want nothing to do with the sport, I don't think there's anything you can do about it. But if you got 20 guys that got a shot to win every week, I think that's appealing. I think that's healthy.
100%.
And I think that's what, that's probably what you're obviously pushing for, is that there should be 20 guys that show up every week that have the equal chance.
And it has to be, because every other sport that we play, it's always 1 versus 1.
Yeah.
It's always one team versus another team. This is the only thing that we ever do that's 40 teams against each other at the same time. So you have to make it easier for half the field to be able to get a win.
And that's the thing with the pit guns. It's just a deal where it starts with a snap-on impact gun.
Yeah.
And then Ingersoll Rand builds a Thunder gun. Well, then somebody takes that thing apart and they hire an engineering firm to, hey, I need this thing to turn 11,000 RPMs. What does it got to have? Oh, well, you're going to have to CNC a billet case. Okay, done. Somebody draws the CAD, put the program in. There it is. There's your 11,000 RPM pit gun that JGR had. Okay. A second and a half on pit road is probably 300 to 500 yards, depending on which track you're at, of a green flag run. Car hauling ass. Second and a half can be worth a lot on pit road. Particularly because you have the guns that are capable of doing it, and then you have a sports medicine program that can train the guys to hang on to these things. Mm-hmm. Like they learn how to do tire changes with this gun. They've never used a slow one before. They don't even know what a slow one feels like.
Exactly.
That's my point. It's all about evolution. And it's about breaking every single thing down. There's people that do hours and hours and hours of fuel can R&D.
Oh yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't it never stops. It's like you constantly look for a weak area in your program and you put resources and people on it. And the bigger your team is, the more people you can put on it.
So in the evolutionary process of just kind of how the technical side of the sport has changed, would you say that when...
I would say only cell phones evolve faster than NASCAR.
Wow.
That's what I would say.
So when everybody switched to like the coil bind setup, would you
Right.
say that's like the big moment when everything got really expensive?
That was a huge moment because there were I remember those days. And Kenny Francis was one of the best at that deal. And he designed uppers and lowers and spring perches and everything that was at the exact angle so that when that spring compressed, it compressed all the coils together at the same time. It didn't press them down on one side or press them down on the other. It pressed them down even. And then when they touched, they all touched together. And that took, welding a spring, compressing a spring and welding it up. And then now you put it in your spring buckets and you make everything match that profile. Right? Just good common sense racing. So that's just kind of how things evolved. And then you had push-up rigs where you could push the tires up and down with the springs in them, the suspension up and down with the springs in them, and you could check all that stuff and check travels and check heights. And it's just, when I look at like footage from the all-star races from the late 90s to the early 2000s, and those things are coming down the front straightaway, and the valances look like you could just run over a baseball. Well, looking back, all you had to do was lower your front end, and your car would have went way faster. But because of the spring setup you're running, you had so much travel in the corners that that's where your valance had to be to not drag it off. So as the bump stops came and the shock inner bump stops and shocks, or however you were limiting the travel, and then keeping the weight transfer the same. So your right front will send energy into the left rear, and your left front will send energy into the right rear. The whole X thing. It took a lot of science and a lot of engineering to figure that out. And some guys picked it up quicker than the others. And some drivers liked the way it felt. Some guys didn't. It's crazy. I remember when we started putting cameras under cars and looking at springs and watching truck arms flex, and you're just like, wow, watching how much sidewalls of tires deflected, and that determined where you were going to hook your sway bar arm to your lower control arm. Where was your link going to be? Because depending on which track you went to, like a Richmond, the air pressure was so low there that the sidewall of the tire would go under the car so much that it would, it looked like the knuckle on the sway bar link would just cut it. It's a crazy amazing thing, and it's just only got more technical. And it'll continue to do so. Like it will never stop evolving until the sport doesn't exist. That's the only time it'll stop evolving.
I do remember asking if you were to make the changes to make it better, to make the racing more competitive, what would you have done? And it was the ride height rule, it was the splitters, getting rid of those, and then slowing the cars down. What do you see now as compared to what you said before?
Well, I think they were running like 32 second. They were 32-second laps.
31s was the fastest, and they were
28s is what they would run otherwise.
They were less than 2 seconds between first and last. From Kevin Harvick back to Timmy Hill, it was 1.98 seconds.
Well, I'm talking about like when the 4-car qualifies this week.
They were in the 29s, 28s, and then they were running 31s.
Okay. So that's quite a bit of difference.
They're slower than the Xfinity cars, and they're slower than the ARCA cars, who are faster than the Xfinity cars. So as it sits right now, when the ARCA cars get out on the track, they will be the fastest car that's ran there in a week's time.
Yeah.
Until the Cup cars get back on there with their old style.
Yeah.
With the low drag stuff.
And again, there's where that logic comes from, where that thinking comes from, because I can't ever see. So you got a top driver, whether it's a Chase Elliott or a Kevin Harvick, or number one, if your guy's marketable and he's good, it's a win-win. And then you got guys that are up and comers that are good, and they're trying to build their marketability, and they need a platform to do that. This is definitely a platform that would probably speed that process up.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the amount of people that need to do that who have full-time rides right now.
Yeah.
It's a pretty significant number. I mean, I know Kevin Harvick makes a big deal about it, but Chase Elliott needs to win a race.
Oh, no doubt.
William Byron needs to go out and pull some miracles like he did last season. Daniel Suarez, almost won that $1 million, and that was pretty cool to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of young guns that the future of the sport is, literally dangling off of, that need to go out there. So what you're saying with this is a good package that allows them to go out there and show their talent.
Think about this too.
I love how Harvick was the one that said
well,
that.
Think about
he's out there waxing everybody's ass.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, you guys need to come up here and win races.
It's like we said
Harvick's
last
probably
week.
not going to be racing in 3 years.
Right.
No, yeah.
Okay, so
you have to have the boogeyman to go conquer.
Who's coming? All right, who's coming? So you got
Blaney.
I'm talking about he's already there though.
Oh,
so who's that
Christopher
modified? Yeah, Christopher Bell. Who's that modified? Brian Priest. What's his name? Ryan Priest.
Yeah.
Wait till those guys get there. Do you think they're gonna worry about a front fender being in the way of them getting a checker flag?
No.
The answer is no. So I don't think you're going to see the true excitement until you have a bunch of non-winners, because the veterans are gone. Now you have a bunch of non-winners, so you're almost restarting again.
Yeah.
Because these younger guys now don't win. So like Austin Dillon's couple of wins, he got them how he got them, but none of those young guys are dominating.
Right.
So until the handful of old guys, the Denny Hamlins, the Matt Kenseth, the Kevin Harvicks, the Jimmy Johnsons, as those guys are gone, I think that's when you're going to see the rebirth of the sport. Because now you got a bunch of new faces. People are going to pick new drivers. It's going to become exciting again because there's going to be so many of them that are trying to prove a point and make a name for themselves at the same time. I think you're going to see in 2 or 3 years down the road, there's going to be 20 dudes that are trying to make a name for themselves at the same time. And just like reality TV, when you have drama, people tune in.
Yeah, there's no such thing as bad news.
People tune in.
Excuse me.
Bad press.
Bad press.
So that's something that I could see happening as I think about things and have thoughts. I'm like, wow, these guys that are coming, the Ty Majeskis, these dudes that are coming. And then if you still have the Chase Elliott's and the Daniel Suarez's and the William Byrons and the Bowman kid, Alex Bowman, you got those guys and they still haven't won. Now they've got to race their ass off to try to prove something, because if those young guys come in, the Christopher Bells and those guys come in and start kicking everybody's ass, now they got to step up, because it's like, whoa, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, rut row, the whole rut row thing. So, and I think that's what it's going to take to get the sport back up and strong again, where it's gonna take the perfect storm of enough of those guys, just like it did in the 70s.
Yeah.
As Richard Petty and David Pearson and those guys came out, think about who followed those dudes and how many of them there were. They were racing pretty hard.
Well, I think you're going to see your next big dominators outside. Next big dominators outside of this class are going to be Christopher Bell.
I guarantee you.
Kyle Larson's going to be a menace.
Yeah, he'll be around for a while. He'll be
Blaney.
the one that carries
Blaney
it. I think
for sure.
Him and Blaney for sure. Kyle Larson and Blaney will carry it for the longest time.
And then, there's always a surprise that comes out of the Truck Series. Eric Jones has dominated. He hasn't had that time to develop in the Cup Series yet, but I think Christopher Bell is going to come out and be a rookie that just...
Suarez ain't no slouch either.
He's doing an excellent job.
Yeah, I'm
he
really
got
impressed
bumped
with
out
him.
way early. And
I'm impressed with him,
He's
for
taking
sure.
care
No
of it.
slouch. Bubba, I think he's got the biggest heart in the whole garage.
I agree with that 100%.
Like
He led laps.
Yes,
that was great.
He is legitimately, I would say Noah's probably the only one that's more emotional than he is.
Right.
And
Noah's not going to be a slouch either.
Yeah. So, he's very super emotional guy. Just wait till he gets up in there and starts getting pushed around and moved around, and he gets a little bit older.
Those guys are going to be racing and winning a lot less money than these guys that are currently doing it now are.
Right.
And
Yes.
because they don't know any different. So
Yes.
$500,000 a year is big money to them.
That's a fantastic way to live a life. $500,000 to drive a Cup car.
But there's also a difference, because the times changed with bringing your sponsor instead of, the racing your
It's
way
a driver
up through-
sourced instead of a
Yeah,
team sourced
it's a
deal.
driver source deal, so that really doesn't apply. But you're also at that point, you're wrecking your own stuff. So where you said how they start, hitting each other, moving each other around, like at the end of the day, like, hey, this is my deal, this is my money that I brought, this is my car.
Well, the other thing that I thought too is I was thinking, what if the driver owner teams come back and people actually start going to the racetrack in a van again? Like, what if that ends up coming back? If that circle comes back?
I think the RTA's, I don't think that's ever going to happen.
No.
Well, I won't say never, because
Did you not see Casey Kane being a team owner?
I see.
Oh, yeah.
I see it. Yeah, but I see it only becoming more franchised.
But you're going to have to be aligned with a manufacturer. You're going to have to get engineering
Yes.
support, because as NASCAR tries to make rules on that, if they decide to to say you can only have so many guys on a team, you can only have so much wind tunnel time, that's when the manufacturer is going to take that in their own hands, and then they'll pass information out probably on a tier on what you can afford to buy.
So you say that there's at least 2 that have some serious interest of joining. 2 manufacturers.
Yeah.
I say that there's going to be 1 in at least 2, at the most 2 years. 2020, I guarantee they will be in. And then the other one, I guarantee 2022, if not sooner. There's 2 that are very hard pressed to trying to get in. So now you would have, 5?
Yeah.
So now you have...
that's the thing. It's where the engine's going to come from.
Can you imagine
car submittal,
a Nismo factory stock car?
Well,
that would be...
That's the other thing. So then that kind
fantastic.
That, everyone's like, oh, well, they're going to come back, this and the other. Well, number one, you have to have an engine shop. That's the first thing that you said.
Like Tammy said.
Yeah, you do have to have an engine shop. So there's that. But all the other series are starting to go to a crate engine.
But why?
I don't think you'd ever see one of the...
What would make a manufacturer want to come to NASCAR if there's no attendance? If there's no buzz around it, like what would attract a new manufacturer?
You would have to see that there's a propensity in that fan base that's going to buy your cars because you come into that space as versus what you're currently marketing.
So how many people, and just not only TV, how many people do you think are paying attention to a race a week? Do you think there's 5 million people a week that are paying attention to it some way, shape, or form, or they read the newspaper or read it online?
I would say 5 million is a pretty solid number.
Which is very good across the board.
Absolutely. So I can see where there's value in
and there's
trying
330 million people in the United States.
Yeah.
Well, you just need to look at what each of these manufacturers are selling per year and then figure out what's the number they need to make back on their investment.
Yeah.
And this is what they can afford to put in. I mean, the numbers are there. The numbers to make that successful are there. Now, how you translate once you get in there and use your motorsports marketing package to drive sales and how you're measuring that and what does a successful first year look like when you know you're not going to sell, an extra 100,000 cars versus what's a successful year 3 and a successful year 5, and how are you paying for this and how are you clearing all this with the board members? There's a lot that goes into this. Well,
that's my point. And you'd almost have to have $200 million to start for a manufacturer to come in. I don't see how you could do it for less than $200 million.
And most manufacturers can swing that pretty easily. They could do that. You just
especially if you're gonna just say you have a wind tunnel at your manufacturing facility, your engineering, and that's just me going back to the Ray Abraham days and remembering when Dodge came in and having my hands and how they stamped sheet metal. And, Ray came to me and says, look, you got to tell these guys how you want the sheet metal stamp because I don't hang bodies. What do you need? You got to tell them what you need. And so from the years of, 95 and 96 model Monte Carlos and Grand Prix, we would actually get the real sheet metal that was on a production car. And so you'd be outside for hours on end with a plasma cutter, cutting everything down, cutting all the excess off, cutting everything down. Well, when we got to the Dodge deal, I had all that stuff stamped that way.
Yeah.
There was no putting window tracks in a roof, and the front one was a 1/4 inch deep, back one was 3/16. There were center marks already in it. There was all the things that you'd have to spend time doing that there could be a margin for error in. I told them I wanted all that in the molds.
Yeah, but there's already being more and more, the cheaper that we make it and the less that goes into this and the more simplified they're making it, the cheaper it becomes for a new manufacturer to come in.
I agree.
Well, Fiat Chrysler is a $34.75 billion company. Nissan is a $40 billion company. They can come play.
What percent is 200 million of 34 billion?
Right. Especially if you're going to...
But we all know that Dodge was entertaining the idea of coming back over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, I've told everybody it's happening, and people keep looking at me like I'm silly.
Well, I think it's coming, but I don't think they were going to be willing to develop 2 cars. So, like, Ford obviously is going to have a new car next year.
Yeah.
And then if you end up after this, and I don't see this next body being, the next cup body is not going to be a flange fit body, but I'm wondering, what 2020 is going to look like. Is 2020 going to be a new engine and a
because I was
composite
hearing
body?
crazy rumors there for a little bit about that composite body, and then they all went away.
Yeah, they're not going to be, the new Ford won't be a composite body.
And to answer your question, it's 0.5%.
0.5?
0.5.
Well, there you go.
But it's like, okay, after what happened in 2008, are you willing to throw $200 million worth of capital away?
I think now they are, especially because it's got the Camaro, the Mustang. I know there's someone sitting in a boardroom, just their mouths watering, wanting to see the Demon out in front of both of those cars.
Oh, I'm sure.
Or the Hellcat, or whatever they decided to run.
And I think that it's just going to be a timing deal because, those are all the details that I don't know. I don't know what NASCAR has planned. I mean, they know what they're going to do. And as frugal of a guy as I am, I couldn't see myself developing a car and then developing another one 6 months later for the next year. I don't, 6 months after you develop one, you're developing another one. I see them saying, yeah, well, when y'all get everything figured out, then we'll come back. When you know what I got to have for an engine, then I'll worry about starting an engine shop. When I know what I'm going to have for a body and a chassis spec, because my thing is when they started the COT car, they really didn't make enough rules on the chassis. They should have called out more stuff if they didn't want nobody changing it. They should have had a wheel tub template. They should have had a shock tower template. They should have had a transmission tunnel template. They should have had a floor pan template. If they didn't want nobody messing with that stuff, they should have had templates for all that stuff. And then that way, all that stuff stayed the same. It never changed. There could have been crush panel rules, rocker length rules, where whether there's no scalloping or you can scallop. There was enough things that they could have locked down to take a lot of that stuff out of the equation. But if you're trying to tune a balance for a driver, and he wants more rear, you're going to take front off to put it on the rear. So if that's wheel tub shapes or different crush panel shapes, different radiator pan angles to shift the balance, there's only so much stuff you can move. So the things that you can move inches, you try to move them inches to see if there's sensitivities there for sure, based on what you need as a team.
Numbers. Ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Nissan Group announced that calendar year 2017 U.S. sales of 1.5 million units. It's a lot of cars.
Well, then you service all those cars too. For the most part, you probably service a lot of them at the dealership.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt.
And then you ask for those for trade-ins. Let me get you a new one. Let me have this one you've been driving for 2 years so I can resell it, because it's pre-owned and it's inspected by us and it's good. And guess what? We still got some warranty on it for you.
So then it goes back to what is worth them, what they think that they can get on the return from having a Nissan Titan in the truck series or a Nissan Altima. I guess it would be the Altima because it wouldn't be the Supra yet, or the Maxima or whatever they wanted to do.
And maybe it's like you're saying, maybe there's a particular model that they're designing right now that's going to be a sportier, competitive model to go.
I mean, they could do the GT
this way.
They could do the GTR right now, but the look of it would change so much. Just like what bogged down the Camaro coming into the Cup Series was that
coming into NASCAR meant you sold 10,000 more vehicles throughout the year, and your incremental sales profit is $8,000 per car. Fair amount. That's $80 million in incremental sales you just added in year one. So that's how these things get. So let's say that out of those, to sell 10,000 cars, you have to convert, let's say there was 5 million people that watched week in, week out, that regularly. So you have to convert 0.00... Hold up, sorry.
So how many? 10,000 cars. 10,000 cars.
So you have to convert 0.2%
a year.
Those people.
10,000 cars a year.
You have to convert how much?
Like 0.2% a year.
0.2%.
You don't think you can send 10,000 cars a week nationwide?
I mean, you probably could. I mean, that was just throwing it out there.
Okay, I got you.
So
So let's say just converting NASCAR fans, you have to convert like 0.2% NASCAR fans to go buy a car that year.
to get 80 million for the year.
To get roughly $8 million for the year.
Which, gosh.
For 10,000 units?
For 10,000 units at $8,000 a unit.
And they're way more expensive than that.
Well, that's just profit off of each unit.
Oh, got it. Okay. Copy.
That doesn't include, your dealership service fees and parts and any upsells you do. That's just pure profit off the car.
So 10,000 cars at 8,000 profit.
Yeah. $80 million a year. 0.2% of the NASCAR fan base. That's how farmers went out and spent $600,000 a race on Casey Kane, because you only had to convert this eensy little number, and it made sense. There's still 5 million people doing anything that will listen to you and spend their money with your sponsors is still a huge chunk of people paying attention and doing things on your behalf.
Yes, but it's also, there's 330 million people in the country.
Right.
So it's still a small fraction of the amount of people. It's still at point whatever percent.
I mean, NASCAR is doing the same thing everybody else is doing. They want their market share to grow. They want their audience to grow. So you have to put those tactics into place in order to grow your sport and get bigger investments from other companies who are looking to market their product and services and brand through NASCAR. So it's an entertainment sport. If it's not entertaining, no one cares. Numbers shrink. What we saw on Saturday night was an absolute improvement to the entertainment factor. And there's just no denying that what you saw, and what I mean by that is better, closer racing, more chances for everybody else to, get up there and pass. Exciting things like more cars in the shot, people passing, green
4 wide,
Oh,
people passing, green flag. And this is with 20 cars on the racetrack. This isn't even a full field. This isn't the 36 to 40.
Well, I did see an interesting poll when I was watching NASCAR Race Hub the other night, and 70% of the people that they polled wanted to see that package sooner than later.
Oh yeah,
70%.
Chicago,
they put that live poll on the bottom.
Yeah.
Of yes, no, maybe. 70% said yes, they wanted to see that package again sooner than later.
Chicago Speedway tweeted out right after the race, begging NASCAR to run that package at the race coming up here month.
I think the soonest you would see it probably be Kentucky.
Yeah, I could see
Kentucky's a repave. Kentucky's got the same problems that Charlotte does from an on-track brand perspective.
Yeah. Kentucky, Pocono.
Pocono would be a good one.
I don't think that they would do it at Indy unless they did it at Kentucky and Pocono.
Right.
You're not going to throw this in.
Well, Indy's a lot later in the year this year,
on the elimination race.
Right.
Well, I can tell you one thing. This is what I think, and this is just my opinion. The attendance at Indy last year was embarrassing.
It was 1,000 degrees, though. It was 113. Well, the year before it was 113 degrees in the shade. And then last year wasn't any better. And I got 8 pit passes that I had given out, that I had accumulated for my team and other teams of getting people in. None of them came because it was too hot. They said, sorry, dude, we ain't coming up. It's too hot.
Okay, so other than temperature, do you think if they had 2 more successful outings with this rule package that it would increase the attendance at Indy?
Yes.
The next time this thing is run and it's a success, which I'm going to just put out there, it's going to be, because what Timmy's saying, you still got to R&D this thing.
Yeah.
It's going to create enough buzz where you're going to see a small attendance spike probably for the rest of the year at overall, and rating spike. And then when they finally announce what they're going to do with this package next year, because the writing's on the wall, right? Yeah. So I think that's when you're going to see kind of more of the drive, like, okay, like I can go to Charlotte and it not be a snooze fest, or I can go to Chicago and not be a snooze fest,
Well, even and I don't even think about the snooze fest part. I think about it's like my favorite driver has a shot to win now. Here's a package where my favorite driver has a shot to win.
That's where the excitement comes from.
That's what I think. That's what I see.
It's not on the restart to where whoever can hold it wide open through 1 and 2 is going to win the race.
When the
and
top
as
six
soon as they
are
get clear, you're like,
passing for
oh,
the
you're
lead.
done. You're done.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't.
Top 6, top 7 are passing for the lead every few laps.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You were watching, like you couldn't look away. You couldn't look
The
away from that
Open
at
was
all.
fantastic.
The Open was a great race.
It usually is the better one, especially what was it when was it Blaney and Chase when they were smashing into each other a couple years ago?
That was Larson and Chase.
Larson and Chase.
I mean, they destroyed them
That
cars
was
in
on
the
a
Open.
Saturday morning.
Yeah. But it was just that much more fun to watch. You couldn't look away. It wasn't the first 15, last 15, and the restarts. It was you stayed glued. Yeah, it was new, but you could see the 22 car snaking his way up through everybody like, oh shit, here he comes.
Yeah.
You could see the 43 go back and then all of a sudden hook up with someone and come back up to the front. Like you...
And that's my point.
You
That's
had
the
a
stuff
chance.
those guys will learn from, because the drivers in the crew chiefs will debrief and they'll look at film and they'll be like, here's the position put you in here. This is what happened, but when you did this, this is how much ground you gained.
Yeah.
That's the point I'm trying to make. It's
if you messed up, if you screwed up, even Harvick,
oh yeah,
it's that ability to recover and to mess up. Second place has a chance now.
Yeah, this package is infinitely more forgiving.
yeah.
Like, infinitely.
So, and I bet you those drivers I bet that's the most worn out they've ever been driving 170 miles an hour.
And and just think about how maybe a pit stop penalty won't hurt you as bad, or you kind of get blocked in your box a little bit.
Maybe so. I mean, with everything that they do to stack the cars up next to each other, the more importance is on track position.
Right.
So
But what
it's
I'm
only
getting
gonna
at
get
is with
more.
this package is you know now that even if
Yeah, losing
Yeah.
3 spots used to be death.
now it's not maybe so
Yeah.
much death.
Which
now
at that
maybe
point it
still,
turns into a speedway race.
That's my point, David.
When all you just have to not lose the draft. Like,
Yeah.
okay, don't screw this up and lose the draft, and we're going to be okay.
Right.
Yeah, if you mess up and we lose 12 spots under caution, yeah, you're going to get your ass chewed. But at the same time, it didn't kill your race like it would at Martinsville.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
So you can recover a lot better, and you could see there was a couple cars that recovered faster.
And I don't know if I would say that I would be really surprised if they didn't make the package across the board and even run it at Daytona and Talladega, just so you only buy one set of each thing. You buy all the same spoilers, all the same nose ducts. You're not carrying a different blade with you to a
but you
different
could
track
never
every
slow
week.
down Daytona or Talladega. You couldn't ever, like you couldn't run Daytona or Talladega at 170 mile an hour.
You don't think so?
It's too big. It's too big a play. They're going to look like they're going too slow. Like there were some of the camera angles. Like I even tweeted it out during the race. There were some camera angles during the Open and the All-Star race that they had to like start panning it, and they went away from it. There was the one as they were coming down the backstretch, and then the one right as they were crossing the start-finish line. It would show them, and the car's like crawling. Like you could tell like that.
Well, that's because you
That
have
angle-
seen them go 4
Yes,
seconds
yeah,
faster than
yes.
that for so long.
Yes. So, but they ended up going away from that angle and started switching to where the cars were closer, to where you got more of a phew, phew, phew. So the guy in the booth made the call like, hey, we need to stop showing this because that car looks like it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, producer caught on to that quick.
Yeah. So maybe it's because he read my tweet. I don't know.
And because, well, you're on a little bit of a delay too. But I think the coolest thing about the whole deal is more guys having a chance to run up front and lead laps. And then I think that that could possibly spike attendance, and it spikes souvenir sales because you're probably more willing to buy your favorite driver's hat and T-shirt
Yep.
if you know he's got a shot to win.
Yep. 38 green flag lead changes. If you don't think that that's any better than 0, then there's no help for you.
No.
But all right, Tim. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Yeah, I loved it. I always do.
Are always our
Resident expert on
Yeah.
all things speed.
yes, resident
Well,
expert
that's
on
the
all
thing.
things speed.
It's there's a lot of talented guys. They won't come and talk to you. They're too shy.
Yeah, there's that. This sport is so secretive that they don't want to talk about it or get in trouble or do anything, say anything wrong or
Yeah, I'm pretty
Whatever.
safe with all that though.
Yeah, you can talk about stuff from a 30,000-foot view.
Yes, yes.
You don't have to get in the weeds with it for it to make sense. Part of your gift.
And it's still to this day, your numbers are still way up there compared to everybody else.
Timmy's actually more famous than we are.
Shout out to Reddit. The guys over Reddit love
Well, thanks
Timmy.
everybody for listening. And actually, I did answer an email from a serviceman, and he just thought that was the greatest thing ever that I responded to his email. And I told him, that we thought of them and appreciated everything they did for us. So Memorial Day coming up, I think that's pretty fitting. That's probably one of my favorite things at the Coca-Cola 600 is the pre-race show. That's why I hope so bad it doesn't rain.
Yeah.
I'm tell you what, when they play taps, if that don't bring tears to your eyes, you're not American.
Yep.
When you really think about what that means and what that is, and all those people are there and they'll die for you right now, that's one of the most amazing things that there is for sure.
And then all the fallen soldiers and
yeah, it is.
Their families are there.
Yes, that is the most amazing. That is why that is one of my top two races. That and the Southern 500 are my two absolute favorite races, and the 600 is my absolute favorite just because of the recognition to our military for sure.
Even down to the tires.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Says, support
that's the
our
best
troops.
damn weekend in NASCAR. I mean, that's like, if that's not reason enough to get every single patriot, every family, the Coca-Cola 600 should just be an annual pilgrimage for people that just love their country. Absolute annual pilgrimage for that. Come and camp, come and spend time.
It's a huge opportunity for them to position it that way.
Yes. I mean, it does it for me. I mean, I love being able to go to that race.
Well, look at the amount of people who appreciate the military. Look at Grunt Style. Grunt Style is $100 million company because this guy figured out that there's enough people here who will buy a lot of T-shirts that say "I love America" in one way, shape, or form.
I never feel safer anywhere else in the world than I do inside the Charlotte Motor Speedway Coca-Cola 600 weekend.
All right, Marcus Smith, you can use that one. You need to talk to Timmy about this.
Wait, didn't they make a movie about... No, wait, that Logan Lucky?
Yeah.
Was that the World 600 or was that the Bank of America's 400? That was the 400. That was a night race that they filmed that on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the 400.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna say to Marcus Smith and Bruce and Smith, thank you for doing what you do for that weekend right there.
Oh, they pull the stops out.
That's the best damn weekend there is.
And then going past the World 600, you have the Indianapolis 500, and you have the Monaco Formula One race.
Yeah.
So
Motorsports Christmas.
yeah,
Triple
it is the
header
Christmas,
weekend.
the only
I watch
one.
every
We
single
brought
one of
this
them.
up on the very episode that we never aired. We brought this up about how NHRA needed to move.
They need to do something.
They need to switch, and they need to get in on this weekend too, because everyone else races on it. So I don't know if you were to race it Saturday night before, so then they kind of kick off the weekend. You do like they used to do, like the Bud Shootout at Indy or whatever. Like do something like that. Have them be Saturday night. You wake up, Formula One race, then you eat breakfast or whatever. Then the Indianapolis 500 lunchtime.
Multiple TVs.
Yep.
Yes.
And then you have the 600 comes
You
on
have
right
friends
after that.
over. You have a party if you're not going anywhere, and you have it all on.
Yeah, and you
Soak it up.
have watched every form of
The
racing.
grill gets thoroughly abused on that Sunday.
And that's America right there, man. That's America.
fantastic.
Charcoal grill and a can of Budweiser or whatever your beverage of choice is, and enjoy it, love it.
Damn it, I'm
Spend
ready for
time.
Sunday to get here.
All right, so have you still got no Twitter, no Instagram stuff?
No, but I promise you, I'm gonna unbusy myself enough, and I'm gonna get Pruitt to hook me up, and I'm working on my personal brand, Petchak Performance, right now,
Petchak Performance.
and
Write it down.
and I'll work on this, I promise.
All right, man. Hey, thank you for coming on and describing in the things that me and him can't, and talking about all this stuff. I know it was last minute. I'm like, shit, we need to get Timmy on.
Yeah, I
here.
know. I answered your message at 4:15 this morning when I got up, and I was like, I'm probably going to wake him up, but if I don't respond to him now, I'm not going to have time today.
Yeah, all good, man. All good.
Thank you guys for having me.
That's all we really got.
Yeah, if there's two people that just don't even knock, just come in. It's him and Hayes. Just show up. I don't just come.
I know what I wanted to say real quick before we get off here. The Hall of Fame just got announced a little bit earlier. Jeff Gordon, Jack Roush, Roger Penske, Davey Allison, Alan Kawicki.
Wow.
Wow. That is a stacked roster.
Yeah.
That makes me feel old because I remember seeing the issue of Stock Car Racing magazine in 1992, or maybe it was right before 19, or it was like January 93 maybe, and Jeff Gordon was standing beside his DuPont car for his rookie season. So maybe 93 was his rookie season. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
So
I think he raced the Babe Ruth car the year before.
Yeah, that makes me feel old to see him going into the Hall of Fame.
I think we might talk to Lauren and see if we can get Bobby to come back on and talk about Davey. That whole deal.
Yeah.
I think that'd be good. Maybe Lauren could hook us up.
I mean, you got the captain, you got Jeff Gordon, Jack. I mean, that's a
Cat and Hat,
stacked class.
Alan Kawicki.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Doesn't get any better than that.
No.
But so now that these have been chosen as this class of Hall of Fame, it's time that we start Joey Knuckles' campaign.
It is time to push Joey into the Hall of Fame
for 2019. Joey Knuckles Hall of Fame 2019.
Help us.
Tweet it out. # Joey Knuckles HOF.
Show the interest. We'll create the campaign. We'll make this happen.
Should we do Knuckles HOF or Joey Knuckles HOF? # Joey Knuckles HOF.
Yeah, that's how I do it. Yeah, that's it.
And if you haven't listened to that episode, please go back and listen to it. That was back in the early days of this show.
What is this, number 40?
This would be number 39.
Oh, okay.
I think. So we're moving right along. All right, dude. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Timmy.
Again. You can find us at Young and Pruitt on Twitter and Instagram. youngandpruitt.com is the website. You can find me at JackmanZack on Twitter and Instagram.
You can find me at Tall Guy Turbo on Twitter and Instagram.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.